Terrifying experience. I stayed the night at my brother's apartment and slept on the couch. That night I had a dream. I remember that my brother, his girlfriend, and I were at his house, hanging out, but they told me that the room in the back of the house was haunted. This is what I've been told in the waking world as well. There was a time that I actually went to hang out with my brother and his girlfriend at her house, and they told me that the room down the hall was haunted. So it makes sense for my brain to connect the instance from the waking world into the dream world. In my dream, they went into the room and I followed behind them. As I saw them walk into the room, the door slammed shut, and the hallway stretched itself to make a long corridor. After the door slammed shut, I heard this evil laughter. It sounded like it was layered with two different laughs, like a deep evil laugh and a high-pitched evil laugh, similar to the demon laughing. I remember flying backwards, away from the door, and then I woke up. This is when it gets terrifying. I woke up on the couch where I fell asleep, but I couldn't move. I continued to hear the laughter, but I also kept hearing the door in my dream slamming shut. The laughter got louder, and the door got louder as well, and loud repetitive sounds set me in a panic. A good example would be when a classroom is full of rowdy students, and they keep getting louder and louder. You know the teacher is about to snap, and that anticipation gives me anxiety. Eventually I put two and two together and realized that it was in the kitchen, the cabinet door slamming shut over and over again, as if I was actually in a haunted house. The sounds were so overwhelming and I couldn't move or speak. That was when I saw him. I turned my focus towards the front door and saw a tall shadow figure standing in the corner. He was roughly 7 to 8 feet tall, and he was the one laughing maniacally. He didn't move towards me. He didn't do anything but tower over everything in the room and face my general direction and laugh. The room felt like it was shaking due to the intensity of the volume, and it felt like it went on for about 5 minutes. It kept getting louder and louder. I tried my hardest to scream. Not a sound came out other than the sound of me struggling to speak. Similar to the sound of someone choking, but I wasn't actually choking. I couldn't breathe though, and it felt like crying from the anxiety and fear. I cannot stress how loud and terrifying the laughter was. After all my years of being fascinated by the paranormal, this experience shook me to my core, and I remember every detail. Eventually everything stopped, and I regained my ability to breathe. I was gasping for air and drenched in my own sweat. My eyes darted the room to see if I could spot the shadow man, but nothing could be found. I was shaking. I had never been so scared in my life. It felt so real, and I wasn't sure if I was still dreaming or if I was awake. The time on my phone said 3:40 p.m. I felt so mentally and emotionally exhausted that I just blacked out. A few hours later, I woke up quickly. I was afraid something else would get me. There was a light shining through the window, so I knew it was morning. I think the time was either 6 or 7 a.m. I got up and went to use the bathroom. When I got out of the bathroom, I walked back to the living room and passed by the kitchen. 3 of the cabinet doors were wide open, and one was open halfway. At first, I assumed I had a nightmare, but after seeing the kitchen cabinet doors open, I'm not sure what I experienced that night. None of this is bullshit. Not a single ounce of this story is fabricated to make an interesting story for Reddit. The only reason I'm posting this now is because I had my second sleep paralysis experience last night. It wasn't even remotely close to being as horrifying as the last one, but it still scared me. I woke up on my bed, sleeping on my stomach, and I couldn't move my arms or legs, but I was able to turn my head towards the clock and see that it was 5 a.m. I felt an immense amount of pressure inside my head and chest, and I heard a loud vibration noise coming from behind me and inside my head. It felt like something was behind my bed, emitting vibrations into my brain, causing them to get louder and louder. Again, it was too overwhelming, and I started to panic, but I was too scared to try and turn over to see what was behind me. That feeling you get when you think you're being watched, amplify that 6 times, and that's what I felt. I could sense something standing at the foot of my bed, but after about 2 minutes, I jolted up. Everything went still. I quickly turned the flashlight on my phone and scanned the room, but there was nothing there. I've had nightmares where I see the same twitchy face figure inches from my face, or seeing them walk up to my front door, which is terrifying as well. Sleep overall is fucked, and these kind of experiences happen years apart from each other. No ordinary dream. I instantly woke up from a deep sleep with a feeling of absolute dread and terror. The palpitations from my heart physically hurt me, and I could not move my arms, my legs, or even my entire body for that matter, and I could not speak or moan. It was as if some unknown thing had a tight grip around my vocal cords, and that physically hurt me as well. I awoke to something else present with me in my bedroom. For me, this wasn't a dream at all. This was a dimension that was the same reality I've always been in, but much more sinister, much more darker and petrifying. A reality in which I was able to see the dark figures around me. I was in their world now. My eyes are open, but they are blurry. I feel this overwhelming, unwanted presence right beside me, as most people do experience with sleep paralysis. I don't hear any voices, but the silence was excruciatingly horrifying, and the energy coming from the dark figure beside me screamed volumes throughout every nerve in my being. I lay there, unable to defend myself or even run from it. It ever so slowly and smoothly made its way from beside my face down towards my feet, and I began feeling and seeing this dark figure of a man making its way up from my feet to get eye level to my frozen face. He was graceful about it. It was unreal. The absolute dread and panic I felt was enough to make me able to fight this crushing weight off to where I could actually physically sit up on the side of my bed. But even when both of my feet had touched the floor, I was still very much deep in the sinister version of reality. Everything looked the same. My bed, my dresser, my door. Nothing dreamlike about it. I cannot emphasize this enough. How the only difference about this was that I was now just amongst the presence of this dark being, and it wanted me. I somehow immediately stood up, and the dark being was behind me on my bed. I'm not sure if he was sitting there or standing. He was just very fluid, is the best way I could describe him. Fluid yet solid. All I could focus on was getting to my door. The adrenaline was intense enough to give me the physical strength to power through in an attempt to get to my door. My grandma was in the room next to me. I knew if I could just make my way to her room, that she would be able to shake me out of this grip I was in thanks to this dark being. I finally made my way to the door ever so slowly because my ability to use my limbs were slim to none. I am still at a loss for words as to how I was able to even get up in the first place. I was still unable to lift my arms up to twist the knob open to my door, so I just ended up standing there, unable to use my otherwise perfectly working arms. This was very uncomfortable for me in itself. I then felt the pitch-black dark man directly behind me. The energy coming from him was so strong and evil that I somehow managed to belt out the loudest scream I could for my grandma to come save me. She heard me and ran towards my room. I tried opening my door, but it was not opening. The weirdest part about that is the fact that my door did not have a lock on it. This is still something I cannot rationalize to this day. She managed to finally get it open, and she grabbed both of my shoulders and shook me completely out of this hell I was in. This horrifying purgatory of me stuck between reality and the side to it, where you are aware of the spirits around you. It is so strange because this experience didn't feel like my last sleep paralysis experience. This was 10 times stronger and 100 times more real. This was pure evil that had purposely awoken me from my sleep, and it was not my first encounter with this dark man, and it unfortunately wasn't the last.